Big news today, of course, is Shaket Mosulmain, this raid on his house, attempted raid on his office as well. The allegation here, it's part of an ASIO operation that involves Chinese espionage or infiltration of his office. Peter Murphy, pretty troubling stuff and perhaps hiding in plain sight, given some of the things he's had to say about Chinese Communist Party policy and even, their approach to coronavirus.
It's very disturbing. What I've read online just before this interview is concerning, and I noticed that the Labor leader in New South Wales is taking swift action in terms of suspending the appropriate person, and there are investigations on foot.
It was pretty swift action. Jason Falinski suspended from the party, out of the caucus. What are your thoughts on what's happened today?
Look, Tom, look, no one wants to make light of this and no one wants to score political points from it. This is obviously a very serious situation where, as ASIO has warned, that the state-sponsored espionage is targeting both major political parties. What is disturbing about this particular incident is that it was, as you say, hiding in plain sight. We don't want to get to these situations. We want to be in a place where both major political parties are taking care of this and ensuring that where there's inappropriate action being taken, that is being weeded out before there can be any influence of public policy. I guess that both major political parties are a long way ahead of the curve on this. Malcolm Turnbull started this process in 2017, and I think it had bipartisan support at the time, but there obviously needs a lot more to be done, and obviously the weak points that we now face are with minor parties and independents, and whether they have the systems in place to ensure that this can't happen. But there's obviously a lot of work for the Labor Party in New South Wales to do, not just on this issue, but on other issues. And the Liberal Party needs to be vigilant as well.
We'll see where that investigation goes, of course. We've just had National Cabinet. I should mention to our viewers, we're standing by to take you live to that news conference with the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. They will be talking about opening up of borders, though. Peter Murphy, should the rest of the country be a little bit less fearful of you Victorians, because we do need to get things going again? The number of infections, even in this spike, is relatively, well, compared to the rest of the world, very low.
Yeah, we've got to be vigilant, and we have to take any increase in positive tests seriously, and clearly our Premier and the state government has, and the federal government has. I don't often quote Scott Morrison in a supportive way, but the Prime Minister said he would come to Victoria, he just wouldn't go to the hotspots, and I think that's fair enough. And we do have to get our economy moving, but I think we also all have to exercise some common sense at the moment. School holidays are coming up. People had been looking at moving around perhaps more than they otherwise would have, and I think we all have to just take a breath and decide whether it's actually essential for us to go where we want to go, or whether it's better to, as we're being advised at the moment, stick to not going to those hotspots unless it's really essential to go there.
Where is the state of New South Wales at exactly with this, Jason Falinski? If we're saying, is everyone except for the people in hotspots in Victoria welcome to go up, spend their money in slightly warmer New South Wales, or is there a bit of fear and trepidation?
Oh, look, absolutely, Tom. And I mean, I think the important thing from the political class at the moment is to help ordinary Australians get some perspective on this. John Keogh wrote an excellent article in the Financial Review yesterday, pointing out that at the same time that 103 Australians had died primarily from COVID-19, of which the majority had other medical issues that were quite serious, 3,500 people died from pneumonia. We have world best health outcomes in Australia. It's important that we now turn those into world best economic outcomes. And, we have expert advice. It is beyond any contention that the internal border controls that some of the state governments have set up are doing no one any good on health grounds, but they are doing enormous economic damage to ordinary working Australians who are just trying to provide for their families and communities.
I think, Tom, if I could just add to that, though,
go, Peter.
You know, I think everyone accepts it's an incredibly difficult position for our leaders to be in, and everyone, all of the premiers, everyone in the federal government, all of those of us in opposition, are doing the best that we can in difficult circumstances, and the premiers are weighing up economic concerns and, as Jason said, the effect on people with health concerns. And it is the case that the measures that have been taken have meant that we've had extraordinary good outcomes in Australia compared to countries around the world. And we just have to remember that the decisions that are being made in the best interest of the people that those leaders
even
are
on
elected
even
to
on an economic sense. Sorry to jump in there, Peter, but Jason, even on an economic sense, I mean, WA is talking about having 60,000 to the football and basically being able to let her rip within their own borders. If they'd kept the borders down and they'd had people coming in from New South Wales and Victoria, they might not be in that position. So there is not just health aspects.
Well, Tom, don't mess with New South Wales. That's all. The first thing I'll say is don't mess with New South Wales. I tried that once with Pat Gorman and I got in trouble. But the other issue that I would
Pat Gorman.
Don't mess with Pat Gorman. But the other big issue is that the medical advice is incontrovertible on this. It is not doing anyone any good. And Peter's right. Look, when this all started, we had the Imperial College in London saying that 250,000 Australians would be infected and we would suffer 25,000 deaths from COVID-19. Now, we're around about 8,500, 9,000 people who are infected, and just slightly over 100 people have died from COVID-19. And as I said before, a majority of those people had other medical conditions that also led to their deaths. That is not to diminish or to try to play that down. What it is to say, though, is that we now have some actual data that we can use to make these decisions. And I do think, and if he told me this isn't the case, I believe him, but I wonder if the Premier of Western Australia is making some of his decisions around border closures on the basis that it is very popular in Western Australia. And that's why when I say the purpose of political leadership is to actually explain to the people of Western Australia that this is not helping them in a health sense, but it is doing a lot of damage to our national economy.
All right.
I think the Premier of Western Australia has done exceptionally well watching him from down here in Frankston in Melbourne, and I believe that he, like all of the other leaders, either Liberal or Labor, are making the decisions that are in the best interest of the people that they represent.
Yeah, well, it seems to be the big pressure right now is the fact that WA football teams are in hubs and losing. Maybe that's hurting him the most.
Peter, the truth is Tom wants to go and watch the Lions, and he's very upset.
Oh, I see. I understand what we're talking about.
Well,
so this is the secret agenda.
It's not secret. They're letting people in Queensland, and the ACT is COVID-free, so I think they'll let me in. We'll see.
Talk about hiding in plain sight.
I can't see either of you at the moment. For some reason, the Sky News program that's being broadcast on my iPad involves Mark Latham, which is somewhat disconcerting. So if either of you are trying to get my attention, I can't see you.
I can assure you we can see and hear you, Peter, so as long as you can hear us. You can hear us still, Peter Murphy?
I can, yes.
All right, well, that's the main thing. Some people might say I've got a good head for radio. Anyway, Jason Falinski, though, talking of medical advice, you've signed a letter today to your own health minister talking about vaping. There's this plan to crack down on individuals importing vaping liquid, e-liquid, nicotine liquid as it's called, from overseas. This goes very strongly against Greg Hunt's views on this. Why have you signed this letter?
Well, I think there are two elements of this, as the letter explains. One is whether this leads to better health outcomes for people who are addicted to nicotine. There is substantial evidence around that demonstrates that it does. The House of Representatives Health Committee did a report last year. The chair issued his own report that pointed to just the overwhelming medical evidence that vaping assists people who have a current addiction to move away from that. The argument that Greg is concerned about is there is some evidence from the United States that demonstrates that vaping, that elements of the tobacco sector or the nicotine sector, as the case may be, are using vaping or marketing vaping to people under the age of 25 as a safe option, which it clearly is not. It is just a better option than cigarettes. So the question that we're
Is the
faced
minister
with,
wrong here
so
to
there's
cite that
that
concern?
element.
I mean, can't
Sorry.
we just introduce it in a well-regulated way that avoids that?
Well, that's the other side of the argument. So the other side, sorry, Tom. So the other side of the argument is, I'm now seeing Mark Latham, Peter, and let me tell you, that's just more disconcerting from that. The other side of the argument, of course, is that even if you agree with what Greg's done, which he has a lot of support from a lot of medical organisations to that effect, should you be doing it as quickly as you've done it before we can get in place the sort of regulatory infrastructure we need to allow people who are currently using vaping to manage themselves away from the addiction that they have to do so. And that's what, humbly, a number of us on the backbench are asking Greg to reconsider.